Hello everyone, Ben here with a solo game of Feudum. The solo game of Feudum is set up very similarly to a normal game. You've got the board laid out as such with all the random location tiles. You've got the guilds with the necessary goods that are being seeded onto them. You are going up against Queen Anne, who has her own special decks of cards that have been shuffled up and placed out in the right locations, the right order, sorry. So she does have a starting pawn on the board, as well as her horse, and also the behemoth starts out on the board as well. And these are in random locations, so they can vary from game to game. And then you get to place your pawn out in one of the starting locations of your choice, basically. And you get to be whichever pawn you like. And that means that the relevant guild statuses are updated to show not only your guildmaster, but also the Queen's guildmaster as well. So that's been set up. Technically the game does state that the Queen is supposed to be the green pieces because the green deck of cards are her cards, but I prefer playing green, so I'm going to be green. And the Queen likes gold, so she can be yellow. And hopefully that all works out. Game plays very similarly to a normal game. You are going to have your deck of 11 cards, and then you get to pick 4, possibly 5 of these to play as actions. The Queen does get her actions from her decks, but they play similarly to normal actions, and we'll see how those go as we go through it. This is not going to have any expansion content, so there are no alter ego cards to worry about, or windmills, sirens, that kind of stuff. I understand you can play with those thrown in if you want to do so, but this is just going to be basically the base game. However, apart from some of the Royal Writ cards are going to be the kind of the bonus Writ cards that come in the game. So some of those will be different from normal. But apart from that, it's all pretty much as it is. So let's get going then. So the Queen gets to go first, so she's going to do her actions, but basically we need to pick from our 11 cards the 4 that we're going to choose. Well, movement's probably a good idea to start with, or at least put in our hand anyway. I don't think we're going to have enough stuff to worry about improving, and we probably won't be ruling an outpost, so not exploring. Hopefully we won't need to bother about defending. No, because she's going to go after the behemoth first, so not necessarily defending. Influence is probably a good idea. Tax, maybe not. Guild is probably a mandatory action on most rounds, so we'll take that. Harvest can probably be next round. Not repeating, and definitely migrating, I think. Not conquering, not yet anyway. So we'll leave those to one side. These will be the 4 that we've picked. We could do a 5th. So I should point out that at the start of the game you get, as well as the basic stuff, your choice of 3 different goods from the haversack, one of which was an extra food, one of which was a saltpeter, and one of which was a sulphur, which has gone straight into the barrel. So we could play the saltpeter, and we could have a 5th action rather than just 4, but I don't think there's anything I really want to spend it on right now, so we'll leave it for the time being and save it for later. So those are the 4 actions we've chosen, and now it's just up to the Queen to do various bits and pieces. Improve. No, she cannot improve. So similarly to a normal action, you basically take one of your specified rulings and you spend some goods, or not in the Queen's case, and then you flip it up to the next level. So she would like to improve a outpost to a farm, or a farm to a town, but considering she doesn't actually rule anywhere at the start, she could not do that. So we check the back of the rulebook for the solo game, which has kind of a flow chart of actions. So she can't do an improve, she would like to do an influence. Well, that makes sense. So she can certainly influence. She's got pawn out on the board, and she can take one of her markers and she can influence. So now she does have somewhere that she can improve on future turns. And that is that. So that was her turn. We get to do something, probably a migrate, followed by an influence, followed by a guild, and then a move. Yeah, I think that makes sense. So we'll migrate first, and then we'll see how everything shakes out after that. So basically you have two choices for migrate. You can either put pawns on the board, or you can take pawns off the board. Fairly simple. Pawns off the board is fine, you just pick it up and bring it back to a supply. Pawns on the board, you have to give up a food, so one from your general supply, back to the haversack, and then you take one of your pawns, if you have such available, and you can turn it to one of the 6 faces, which basically donates one of the 6 guilds, and a special character, and then you place it down either where you have another pawn, an influence marker, or if neither of those cases are in effect, onto the pink starting space, any pink starting space. So we could be, I think the Merchants Guild is probably a good idea. So we'll plonk that pawn down like such, and we'll turn it to this particular face. So now we have a merchant on the board, and we get Guildmaster status in the Merchants Guild. And we'll use that die. So these dice do not actually come with the game, but they are a handy way of figuring out, hopefully at a glance, how many guild points you have in the relevant guilds, and therefore whether you should be going up and down the status or not. And hopefully I'll remember to keep track of that. I won't forget as such. I was just checking because the Queen actually did put out an influence marker on a outpost, which may have affected her guild status, but not in this case, because outposts and other locations are a secondary source of points. So you basically need a primary source of points, which is either the pawn or a ruled feudum, to start getting you entry into a guild, basically, and then you can supplement your guild points with a secondary source of points if you have such ruled locations like farms and towns and outposts, and add on to your guild points like that. And we'll see how all of that shakes out as we go through the game. So we did a migrate, we gave it the food, we put a pawn out, done. Right, on to Queen's second action, which is going to be a move. Yeah, okay. So basically she wants to move, at least at the start of the game, pawns towards the unfortunate behemoth. And she is going to go the quickest route she can, or the shortest route I should say. So 1, 2, 3, 4 is probably, yeah, is probably the shortest route. So in effect she's going to go 2, and then on a future turn she could go that way and end up there. So she does a move, she moves all pawns, they move 2 spaces, and she can do a pilfer at the end of a movement, just like normal. However, in this case there is nothing for her to pilfer, so not in effect. And then some of the cards in the number 2 deck may show the sulfur icon, in which case that is a sequential action, and you immediately take a number 3 card and do that action, which is going to be improve, and she can definitely do an improve this time. So she does have a location which is improvable, and she will therefore take, if I can get it off the stack, there we go, a farm icon, and she will swap out the outpost for a farm, like so. And then that just goes back to the relevant stacks and may be used later on, depending on how things go. So that is there, and now she needs some points, unfortunately. So the area in which she improved a location was the Badlands. So we go along to the relevant landscape stack, and you can hopefully just about see that there are the particular icons at the top here. So this is the Badlands stack, and we need to essentially take the top landscape tile, as long as it's pertaining to a current or former epoch, and give it to the Queen as a landscape tile. So she gets that landscape tile over to her area, and then she gets some points so that we can see that the tile was epoch 1, so it's not the epoch of the current round, it is the epoch of the tile that you're taking off. So epoch 1, and we upgraded to a farm, so we get 2 points, or rather the Queen does, which is a shame, but never mind. So 2 points there, and that's that. So now she has a farm. Does that influence things? So she's in the Noble Guild, and the Noble Guild only takes towns into account for points, so no, not farms. But on a future turn where she probably gets a farmer's pawn out, or a knight's pawn, this will then add some more points to her guild status. But for the time being, it's fine. So that was her second and third actions all together. Well, it gives us more stuff anyway. So now we could move and then influence, I think is probably a good idea. So yes, we'll do a move now. So we have 2 pawns on the board, which we can move. Unlike the Queen, we don't get full movement with all of them, unfortunately. It's basically a choice between, well, it's 2 points of movement, and you can either split it between the 2 pawns, or you can give all of it to 1 pawn, or a combination thereof, depending on how much movement you have. So using 2 points of movement might not be a bad thing on 1 pawn, because we can go there and then there, and come and pilfer this this food that's happily sitting there, and free up this location maybe for a possible takeover by influence. I think that's probably a good idea, actually. Or better yet, let's do it this way. So we use our merchant pawn instead, and we'll come over here. So 2 points of movement, and at the end of it we're going to pilfer this food. You can only pilfer 1 good, so even if you had multiple pawns moving and they all ended up somewhere where there was a good, you'd only be able to take 1 of them off the board. But still, 1 is better than nothing, so sure. That was our movement. Right, so the Queen is going to do another action, hopefully a final action. Wow, she's really racking up these improvements. This is potentially very good for us, actually. So yes, she is now going to improve again. She now goes to the second hierarchy, basically, because she's exhausted all of her outposts that she can improve. So now she wants to improve farms, and she will improve this farm to a town. So handily double-sided, we just flip it over, and it's now a town. Unfortunately for her, she does not get any points, because it's again in the Badlands region. So she comes to the Badlands stack, and she wants to take the top landscape tile. Well, the top landscape tile is now a future epoch, not a current or former one. So she cannot take future epoch tiles. So instead, she would then, in a normal game of your choice, but in her case it'd be a random one, she wants to try and take a former epoch tile of a different stack. Well, there is no epoch 0 tiles, so she can't take a former one. So she cannot take any tile, unfortunately. And if you don't take a tile, you don't get any points. So good for us, bad for her, which is fine by me. So she upgraded it quite happily for us, because I think we're going to take that over very soon, and didn't get any points out of it. So yeah, not complaining at all. That was her fourth and final turn. If on the fourth card there is a saltpeter icon, then she will get a fifth turn where she'll play a fifth card, but in this case it's just the fourth turn, so that's fine. Back round to ourselves, and we're definitely going to influence now. So we'll play our influence card, and we have two things we can do, or well, two influences basically. So you can put down an influence marker everywhere you have a pawn. If there are multiple pawns on a location, you can still only put down one influence marker, however. So no doubling up, unfortunately. But we'll quite happily put one down there for that farm. Is that going to change things? No, no, okay. And we will put one down here for where this town is. However, because we have a merchant pawn we're influencing, we get to use money as influence. Money as influence ability, I believe it's called. In that we can pay a shilling, and the lone influence marker we're putting down, as long as the one in place is solo, we can essentially swap it out. So if the Queen, however, had a ruler and a subject, we could not do it. But because she has just the ruler, it is susceptible to us buying it out, basically. And we get to take over a location, which does actually change us in a guild. So we now have one merchant pawn and one ruled town. So merchant pawn is 1 point, ruled town is a second point. So we have 2 points in the Merchants Guild, which is better than nothing anyway. The Queen still has her noble pawn, so she is in the Nobles Guild, but that's about it for her. So yeah, that's pretty good. And we're done. And this money just goes into the supply. So we've done our influence. Queen's still finished with abilities, so now we can do a guild. Let's see. And this is kind of where the most analysis paralysis can come into the game, basically, because depending on how things play out, you have an ever-increasing amount of options you can do. There are 6 guilds arranged in technically a circle around the board, really, and you can certainly trade with all of them. So trading is an ability you can do, and that is not restricted on your status in the guild, so you can trade with all 6 of them. And then pushing and pulling is dependent on whether you are the journeyman to pull goods into the guild, or the guild master to push goods out of the guild. So we could trade with all 6 guilds, or because we are the guild master in merchants and alchemists, we could push goods from the merchants to the alchemists, or push goods from the alchemists across the board to the Knights Guild. Well, I think we're definitely going to push from the alchemists at some point, but not quite yet. What we're going to do instead is push from the Merchants Guild over to the alchemists. Because then we can, on a future turn, push from the alchemists over to the Knights Guild, and then buy loads of barrels, influence markers, and get control of the behemoth, and hopefully stop him being slaughtered early on in the game. That's the plan anyway. Whether it will actually work out remains to be seen. So to get that rolling, we're going to push into the Alchemist Guild from the Merchants, and there is some iconography on the top of each guild which tells you what you can do, and there is on your player aid a detailed description, or a description anyway, of what you can do with the various guilds. Some of the fiddly rules are omitted from that, unfortunately, so you may have to check the rulebook just to make sure you're doing it correctly. But to start with, we get 5 goods, or 4 goods, sorry, from the Merchant's Guild, and we get to put them into the Alchemist Guild if they fit. If they don't, you can't do it. So we're going to take 2 food, and we're going to take 2 sulfur, and we're going to fill up those respective areas. So 4 goods have been moved across, which resulted in 2 areas being filled up. Basically, if you manage to fill up 1 area, you get 4 points. If you fill up 2 areas, you get 5 points. If you fill up 3 areas, you get 6 points. Well, we're going to get 5 points, and is it worth putting a reeve out, I wonder? Should have a second one. Where's it gone to? There it is. So you get some reeves, you get 2 reeves to be precise, and you can, when you do a guild push or pull, you can basically attach these then to that particular guild, and you will get bonus points when you do the guild actions then. So we could now attach this to our Merchant's Guild like such, and we would get a bonus point on the push we just did, and then on future rounds, whenever we use the Merchant's Guild, we get more bonus points. But it does tie up this reeve, which can be a player disc, and I'll hopefully come on to why that's a bad thing later on, possibly a bad thing. But for the time being, I don't think we're going to bother doing that, so we'll just leave it as it is, and we'll just get the 5 points from doing the push action. I apologise if some of the things I'm going through seem a bit scatterbrained, but as you can probably imagine, there is a lot in the game to try and keep track of, and it interconnects in such a way that going off on one thing and trying to explain it can probably leave you on a tangent where you're trying to explain 5 or 6 other different things. So if at any point it doesn't seem like I'm making much sense, that's probably because my brain is completely overwhelmed with whatever's happening in the game at the time. I will try and keep that to a minimum, hopefully. Anyway, we did the guild action, we got some points for doing it, and we are done with our cards. So we played our 4, Queen's played her 4, we're all done with the round, so we come to round end. This is now nourishing pawns, basically. So Queen does not care about her pawns, they either have unlimited food or they get fed off the landscape, or however it works out, but she doesn't nourish pawns. You still have to nourish your pawns in the normal way, so you either give up a food back to the haversack, and the pawn is considered fed for the round, or you can, from your wine barrel, take a sulfur and place it out on top of a particular pawn, and then that pawn is considered nourished for a couple of turns, and unfortunately is drunk for the first turn, which means it has 0 attack or defense. So we could definitely probably get this one using the sulfur, and we'll use a food for the other one. So 1 food back to the haversack, 1 wine out onto our merchant pawn. I'm not fussed about this one being drunk. This one might have some problems with maybe in a conquest later on. So if we keep him attack and defense as normal, then that should be fine. And we are done with nourishing pawns. So now we roll the progress die, and it is desert. I think that's desert. So you have the progress die with all the 6 regions depicted on various faces, and you simply go along to the relevant landscape stack and you take off a tile, as long as there is one to be taken off. And then this kind of helps speed the game along, basically, by removing various landscape tiles, because whenever certain numbers of future epochs are shown up, then that the game moves ahead into that particular epoch. We're not there quite yet, but we are certainly getting there. About 50% of the way, basically. And then that tile is out the game and can no longer be used for anything. And we're into the second round. So we get the first player marker. Queen will get her cards when they come up. We need to put all of our cards back into a stack of 11 and now again choose our 4 cards to do actions with. So, well, possibly 5. We do have the saltpeter, and we have more options now with which to use various actions. Conquer is possibly out of the question, I think. This pawn on its own is not enough to conquer this pawn. So I don't think we'll be conquering. Certainly won't be repeating, I suspect. Harvesting. We could harvest. We've got a ruled farm. We could do a harvest. Maybe. We've got a ruled town. We could do a tax. We're not going to defend. Or at least we're not going to play the defense card. We might get attacked at some point by this pawn, but our defense is sufficient with that one that we can defend without having to resort to wasting a card on it. So we'll leave that. Not going to explore. We're not going to improve. No, I don't think we're going to improve yet. Guild is probably a good pick for something anyway. Not fussed about migrating or influence. Maybe moving. Is that 4? That's 4. Oh. Moving might be a useful option. I do have a plan in mind where we get out onto the river spaces and then we get a riverboat and go around to other areas of the board. So that is also a plan. Rescue the behemoth, onto the river, go around the river. So if we can move, do a guild to get pieces into the Knights Guild, and then maybe we actually might need that repeat if we can do a double guild then and purchase from the Knights Guild. Tax, because money is always handy and we're going to need some money later on to buy vehicles. And harvest, because we've got a farm, so why not? Yeah, alright, we'll do all of that and we'll see how it all kind of shakes out. So we've picked 5 cards, so we need to pick a saltpeter and place it into our pouch. Basically, any sulfur or saltpeter you have in your player area, you can choose one of them and you can place it onto your pouch. Saltpeter says you're going to do a 5th action. Sulfur says you're going to do 2 actions back to back. Now in the normal game this can be done in turn order, most likely in turn order, because other players may want to see what you're doing first before it gets round to them, and then they have to make a decision whether they want to be doing similar stuff as well. But for the solo game we can just place it out there and say we're going to do 5 actions, and that's fine. So we've got our 5 actions. We are going to go first. So harvest can probably wait for some time. I think we definitely want to be doing guild actions quicker rather than later. So these are the ones we didn't pick. So we'll do a guild and we'll do another push, and we're going to push from the Alchemist Guild this time. So we are Guild Master, we can do the push action there, so that's fine. Push action from Alchemist Guild is you basically invent stuff. So depending on what goods are available, you check the relevant ratios basically and then start moving things around. So we are definitely going to do 2 barrels, which is a total of 3 saltpeter and 2 sulfur. We can't do a 3rd barrel. So if you check the Knights Guild, if you can see past the glare of the board, I do apologise, the sun is shining directly at us. If you check the Knights Guild, you can see that it has spaces available for 2 more levels of barrels, as it were. There is the first level of barrels, which is just the 1 markers. You have the second level of barrels, which is 2 markers, and then the 3rd level of barrels, which is 3 markers. So by inventing 2 more barrels worth, we would fill up all these 4 markers. And that is it. We can't do more than there is space. So we can do 2 barrels, and then we could probably invent a vehicle if we wanted to do so. But that lot is definitely going to go back into the haversack. And we could do a vehicle. What have we got? So we've got the flying vessel and the boat, but no submersible. Well, I'm not fussed about the no submersible, to be honest. I think we'll leave it at that. It's 1 less point that we're going to get... Sorry, start again. It's 1 less point that we're going to get for the guild push, but it does leave us options later on, so we can possibly get a successful push and then get more points then, rather than wasting it all now and leaving us stuck for points later on. So we'll just do the 2, we'll get the 5 points. So again, 1 invention is 4 points, 2 is 5, and 3 is 6. So there's a similar pattern going on between the guilds. And because we invented barrels, we then have to come over to the Knights Guild and basically fill up. So 1 invention's worth of barrels will get the first barrel, or the second barrel, completely filled up now, and then the third one, or the second one I should say, will get the third one filled up. Very confusing, I know. Hopefully it makes sense now, you can see it in action. So this is all now filled up, and then these will get used at some point, probably either being bought or pushed over into the Nobles Guild. So that was the guild action, and we got the points, and now the Queen is going to do her first action of the turn around, so she is going to do a guild action. Well, okay, fair enough. So, similarly to yourselves, she can do pulls, pushes, or trades. And we have to find out what. So we have to find out what she's going to try and do first. So we roll the the fate die, which has the various actions depicted on all the sides. So she is going to try and do a guild push. It could have been a trade, in which case she could have traded with any one of the 6 guilds, one at random. But because it's a guild push, she will try and now do it, obviously, in the guild she's guildmaster in. And that is just the Nobles Guild for the time being. So that makes it very easy to determine what she's going to do. She's going to push from the Nobles Guild. And she's going to take... So when you push from the Nobles Guild, you take 2 of the rosary beads, you place them into the Monks Guild and hope you get high numbers and therefore lots of points. So she takes 2 at random. We may as well take these 2, flip them over. Oh, that's looking very good for her. And then we can arrange them highest to lowest just to help out, like so. And then we tie them up, so we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, and then a further 6 is 14. So yes, that's enough to get her the second threshold of points. So basically, if you did not even reach 5 value worth of rosary beads in the Monks Guild, you wouldn't even get the 4 points. You reach 5, you get 4 points. You reach 11, you get 5 points. And you reach 17, you get 6 points. Well, she is currently at, 14? So she is going to get the 5 points from the guild push. And that will boost her up to 7 in total. So that was pretty good for her. And then this just goes back on... No, that's mine. That's my card. She's already placed hers back on her pile there. So now it's back to us. So we did a guild push. I think we'd want to do a second. So we're going to repeat and do another guild action. That's going to be a guild trade this time. We can't trade with the Alchemist Guild again, or we can't do anything with the Alchemist Guild again. You can only interact with 1 guild per round. So we've done stuff with the Alchemists, so now we have to find stuff to do with another guild, but we can quite happily come over to the Knights and buy some influence markers now. So you spend 3 silver. We do indeed have 3 silver. So we spend 3 silver, and we buy a row of markers. Well, we're going to buy our own, obviously, and we're going to buy all 6 of them. So we're going to take 3 of them and place them in our supply. That's fine, we're going to use those later on. But we're going to take the other 3 and we're going to buy the behemoth with them, essentially. So 2 of them go back to this general supply out there. 1 of them goes onto the behemoth to show that you are the one controlling him, and this guy is now under our influence and we can direct him around the board as we like. So hopefully we'll be able to keep him out the way of the queen's pawns, and he won't get killed off, and he'll survive to the end of the game. Hopefully, anyway. And then the money, we now have to basically start assigning it to various people. So the first coin that you spend in a particular guild trade goes to the guildmaster. Well, there is none, so it's back to supply. The second one goes to the journeyman. Again, there is none, so it goes back to supply. And the third one goes across the board to the charity guild. In this case, it's the farmers. So any money that you spend on this side, so knight, noble and monk, the third coin gets sent across to the farmers guild, and it goes in the pouch there. Any money that you spend at the farmers guild, the merchants or the alchemists, go again across the board to the monks' coffers, and they go in there. And then those get cleared out when guild masters for the respective guilds do subsequent pushes, and the money gets allocated to them. And we'll probably see how that works later on. And in a guild trade, if you've done more than 3 coins, basically, you just go round again and assign them as before. So that was our second repeated guild action. We got some influence markers out of it, we got control of the behemoth, that's pretty good. Queen is going to do something. Oh, another guild action. Oh, interesting. Well, she can't. No, I tell a lie, she can if she rolls... Well, I suppose it's going to have to be a trade, isn't it? And it was. So she's going to trade, and now we have to find out which guild she's going to trade with. So we basically roll a pawn, it's got all the guild faces on it, and she is going to trade with the Knights Guild. So, fair enough. She does not use money per se. She basically gets an unlimited amount from the general supply, and she can spend it as frivolously as she likes. So she is certainly going to buy a stack of markers. She'll buy her own markers, because that then frees them up for use, and she doesn't have to worry about them getting bogged down in the Knights Guild and not being available. So she'll buy her markers, and she will spend the money as before, so 1 to the guildmaster, 1 to the journeyman, and 1 again across the board to the farmer's pouch. And then these 2 just go back to general supply as well. So, never mind. Back to us, we've got a third card to play. We could do a movement. Might not be a bad idea. Yeah, okay, so we'll do a movement. Now, technically we have 3 pawns. We've got our 2 normal ones, and we now have the behemoth, who basically adds to your movement allowance, and you can move them around. Well, we definitely want to do 1 movement with the alchemist pawn so he can get onto this river space, and we can start buying a riverboat and going around there. We want to move the behemoth in such a way he's no longer in danger. So if we go to... Well, we'll just go 2. So we'll do that, and that's our second point of movement. And then we'll use this guy to go 3, and that's our third point of movement. So that seems about right, and we'll do that. There is no road connecting these spaces, but there is a flying route, so behemoths, or the behemoth, can use roads and flying routes, and the sea serpent can use boat routes and submersible routes. So he's quite happy wandering over the landscape to there, and that will keep him out of the way for some time at least anyway. And we'll probably keep moving him around as we see fit. And then the queen is going to do an influence. So she's got the one marker, or the one pawn, sorry, so she can certainly influence there. And she is now a serf in that position there as well. Okay, well that's not too bad. I mean, she could be doing worse things, so I'm quite happy to see that. Then we have a choice of tax or harvest, and I don't think it matters too much which we do. No, let's do a harvest first, because if we're unlucky and the queen does a second influence, then she's going to knock us off this farm and put her piece there as a ruler, because she has the most influence markers. So we'll do a harvest first before we potentially lose that farm. Although if we do lose the farm, then we're just going to give her all the goods. Well, we'll do it anyway. We're still going to get one from the kickback, so sure. So we have a farm ruled, so we get 5 goods as a basic harvest, and then any Feudum's farms or rosary beads you have, increase that base harvest up to a maximum of 10. But we don't have any modifiers, so we're just going to get the 5 goods. That is 4, and we need a 5th. That is the 5th. And then out of those, you can either put them all onto the farm, or you can get a kickback. And the ratios are shown on the card, but basically 4 of them, I think we definitely will take the kickback, so 4 of them are going to go to the farm, and then 1 of them is going to go to our personal supply. If we had a farmer's pawn out, we could basically choose the one we want and not have to worry. However, without the farmer's pawn, it's basically random, so we'll just kind of shuffle these around a bit and drop. Whoops. Try that again with those 2, and that one. Okay, well that's not too bad. So we get a sulphur out of it anyway. Probably would have wanted a food, maybe more, possibly a saltpeter for the extra action. But sulphur's not terrible. And then when you acquire a sulphur, you basically have to make a on-the-spot decision whether it goes into your personal supply or into a wine barrel. There is no after-the-fact chopping and changing, unfortunately. So either we put it in our personal supply and then we can use it for sequential actions later on in the game, or we put it in our wine barrel and we use it to nourish pawns and possibly throw some feasts. I think that's probably a no-brainer, to be honest, with the wine barrel. Well, sequential actions back-to-back might be a useful idea at some point, but not at this very moment in time. So we'll keep it in the wine barrel, and that will certainly help our pawns out. And we've done the harvest. And we do get a point because the card says so. And then the queen is going to do a harvest. No, she is not. She does not have a farm to harvest with. Okay, so what does she do instead if she can't harvest? She does attacks. Again, no. She does an explore. Again, no. Wow. All right, fair enough. That is the problem with not having any ruled locations. So basically, on the hierarchy of actions, she can't do a harvest, so she goes down to attack. She cannot do that. She cannot do an explore. She cannot do nothing. So yeah, quite happy with that. That is essentially a wasted action for her. I believe she does get the point from the card, though. I'm not 100% sure on that one, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but the card does state you get a point if played. I don't believe that has to be a successful harvest. Maybe it does. Anyway, we'll give her a point because we're feeling generous. And then we get our 5th and final action, and we have to give up the saltpeter to do so, so that goes back into the haversack. And we can do a successful tax. We have the one ruled town. Nothing else, unfortunately, no other towns or feudums, so we're just going to get the 2 money for that from the supply. So that's back up to 5. Okay, that's enough to buy a vehicle anyway. and we're done. No further actions for the Queen. She did not get the right icon on her cards, so we're all done with actions. We need to nourish pawns. Yes, we do. Okay. So this one is nourished continually by the wine, which now comes off. So it is successfully nourished. It is no longer drunk, but it's quite happy for the next round. This one does need a food or a sulfur. I think a food. We've got some food, so we can give one up, and then this pawn is now nourished for the next round. Behemoths do not care about food in a normal way. They go around and eat people, so you don't have to worry about giving them stuff. And that's everything. Progress die says desert. Can we do the desert? No, we cannot. So it's a future epoch tile showing up on the desert location, so we can't take that one. So basically we need to roll again. It is the mountains. We can take one off the mountains, so that one is now out of the game. And we are getting reasonably close to Epoch 2 turning up. And a new round. So Queen is first, so she's going to do stuff in just a bit. We need to be doing what then? Well, again, probably the obligatory guild, wherever it's gone to. Yep, we're going to do a guild. We're going to buy that boat we've been eyeing up and getting out onto the boat routes. So we want to buy the boat, we want to do some movement. Where's movement? Yep. Influencing might be a good idea. We've got all those influence markers we bought off the Knights Guild, so those can come in handy. No, that's harvest. Here we go, influence. Then what? We might want to start looking and improving. We don't actually have any of the relevant goods to improve. So if we do a ×2 with the guild action and we buy from the Merchants Guild, we could get some wood, we could get some iron. Is that a useful expenditure of our money and actions and time and effort? Or we could do some more taxing, get some more taxes. I think it might be worth doing another harvest. Yes, I think indeed. We might do another harvest, and then next round we could sell all the goods from the harvest and get some more food and get some more pawns out with my grapes, and yeah, okay. So I think we'll probably do that. In which case then, that's 4. We don't have a saltpeter, so we can't play a 5th, so yeah, that's the 4 actions we're going to do. Starting with the Queen then, who is going to migrate. So she's going to get a second pawn out on the board. Similar to her first one, you roll the pawn to determine which side it's going to come up on. You roll the landscape die, you roll the fate die to determine where it is exactly on the landscape. So, well, it can't be a noble again, but the rest of that stuff checks out. So whatever it is, it's going to end up in the hill region in the southmost section. But it can't be a noble because she is already in the Nobles Guild, and wherever possible she likes to be in different guilds. So it can certainly be a farmer. So farmer in... That's Badlands, isn't it? That's Badlands, that's hill region, yeah, okay. So farmer in the South Badlands will be down here. So it looks like our behemoth moves out just in time. And then because she has the farmer pawn on the board, she now gets... Nope, it's... Which one is it first? I think it's General Supply first. She now gets status in the Farmers Guild. And she has 1 point in the Farmers Guild. The point I was questioning just earlier was when she gets new influence markers, I believe they do come from General Supply first rather than ones she has accumulated, because these are potential points at the end of the game, whereas these are just ones she can just grab whenever she feels like it. So that is all done. And now we need to, so that was a migrate, yep. And now we need to do something, probably a guild trade. Harvest, influence, I'm tempted to do, no, we'll do a guild trade first. I was going to say I'm tempted to do an influence first, because the sooner we get a second marker out onto this farm, the better protected it is against the Queen mucking around and making a mess of things. But either way, it's going to be, I think, several turns of getting markers out, getting more harvests before we're fully secure. So we can do a guild trade, and then if she knocks us out there, we'll just go somewhere else and get another farm and harvest there instead. So fine. So guild trade, and we're going to trade with the Alchemist Guild. So we need to spend 3 coins, and we need to buy a vessel. And there is the boat available, so that comes onto the board. And similar to before, the first one goes to the Guildmaster, who is fortunately us. Second one goes to Journeyman, who is nobody. And the third one goes across the board to amongst coffers. And then we get our shiny new vessel, and we can place it out where we have someone to plonk on top of it. This step is important, because if you do not place someone on top of it, other people can come along and steal it from you. And you've just lost your newly bought vessel for no good reason. So we'll place a marker on top of it, and then we can use it to go up and down the river and around the boat routes there, which I think is up the river maybe first all. And we'll go into this region which is kind of cut off, and we'll get some places out, get some markers out there. So yes, we'll do that. And that was guild. So over to the Queen, who is going to move. So this one is going to jump there. This one is going to lag slightly behind and go 2 spaces. Is that quickest? Yeah, I think that's definitely quickest. So they each get 2 movements worth, and this one goes to the behemoth and stops, basically because that's what she wants to try and conquer first of all. And we might have to move him very soon then. But at least this farm is now free and clear, and it's not going to get knocked out anytime soon. So she moved, which leaves us to probably move, I think, to be honest. And we'll get this behemoth on his way and out of danger. So if we do a movement, and again we have 3 points worth of movement, so behemoth is definitely going to go all the way down here to there. He could carry on, he could go over this, step over the shoreline basically and carry on over here, but I think that's fine. He'll just do the 1 movement, because then this guy on the boat can do 1 movement and then hop off and come up to this farm over there, and we'll grab that farm at some point. The boat is not going to get stolen by the Queen, so that's fine, and we can come back later on, grab it, and carry on our merry way down the river. So sure. Then the Queen is going to conquer. Well, that was fortunate we moved the behemoth out of the way, wasn't it? So she has a hierarchy of conquerable options. Behemoth is obviously number 1, followed by Sea Serpent. Well, none of those. Then Feudums, then Pawns, and then if all else fails, she wants to starve the people. Well, there are no Feudums, and she is not where we are with Pawns, so basically she is out of options for the conquer. So she can't conquer, she then tries to do a migrate. That makes sense, basically. So this is her last normal pawn. After that she starts moving on to the black pawns, which are a bit of a pain. And this one goes Well, Knight's Guild is fine. It can certainly go on that. And it's going to go in the desert. When I get a relevant location, I'll let you know. West. Desert West. So, over O. That is unfortunate. Indeed. So basically the knight showed up. She needs to get into the Knight's Guild. So we will do that. She gets 1 point worth of guild points for the pawn. So she is now in the Knight's Guild. That's an unhealthy number of guilds for her to be in. I think I might have to do something about that sooner rather than later. But more importantly, she is now within conquering ability of the behemoth, because when she attacks, or if she attacks with a knight, these guys have unlimited saltpeter. So it doesn't matter how much your defense is, if a knight is there, or a black pawn is there, you are gone. So we may have to, we have no more movement this round, so hopefully, fingers crossed, she won't try and do a conquer. If she does, well, it's an early grave for him. We have an influence we can do, and then a harvest. So influence first, we're going to do a place where we have every pawn in another location. So 1 there, and 1 there. So that gives us 1 more farm point. That does not matter, does it? I'm having a look around the board. I don't think so. We get 1 more town point. That, I believe, does matter for the Merchants Guild. So this is now 3 points in the Merchants Guild. So that is more than enough for the Merchants Guild anyway. And that was influence. Right, fingers crossed. Good. It's an oh, she can't improve. Is that going to come back to bite us? What can she do if she can't improve? She could influence. She can certainly do that. I'm happy that she does that. So, no improvement options available because she does not actually rule anywhere. Oh no, I tell a lie. She can certainly do an improve. Have I been shortchanging on that? I do not recall. Basically, if she cannot improve a main area, she will then do a landscape. And she will put out a landscape where she has a serf. I hope I haven't been shortchanging on that one, because she certainly does have serfs and she has had them for some time. Whether or not that coincided, I don't recall, but we'll give it to her now. So basically she has an available landscape that she can tend. She has various areas where she can place it out. So it's going to be a die roll to determine 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It is 3. So there. So that guy goes on the landscape. And when landscapes go out, they immediately get their benefit, which in this case is 3 archery butts, and she always grabs them. So if they come out when the landscape comes out, or they come out when the tile gets replenished, she immediately grabs the relevant stuff rather than saving them over. So 1, 2, 3. One of them goes to us as the ruler of this particular landscape or this particular area, and then 2 of them go to her. And in the case of archery butts, they just get turned into influence markers from the general supply. So we will get 1 and she will get 2, which I'm not sad about whatsoever, actually. I'm quite happy to have 2 more influence markers. And that was her improvement, so that is fine, which leaves us with our final action, which is a harvest. So we can definitely do a harvest. We have multiple farms with which to place a harvest on, and they will complement each other. So it's a base of 5, but because we have an extra farm, it's now 6. So we get 6 from the bag. That is not 6, that is 7. Let's drop 1 out. Well, they're both sulphur, so that's fine. So a sulphur can go back in the bag. This is the perils of trying to do it one-handed. So that's our 6 random goods, and we get one of these as a kickback. So, well, is there actually any that I want to... Well, the sulfur might be handy, and I suppose the iron possibly for improving. So yeah, we'll take the kickback, and hopefully we'll get something useful out of it. Well, the iron dropped out first, so we'll grab that. And the rest go, and you can put them on either farm, but we'll stick it on this farm here. And then we get the iron into our supply, and that can be a potential improvement later on. Right, and that was our harvest. We get a point for the harvest, like so. And now we are on to, well, that was all the actions. Queen's done all her actions. Good. So we're on to nourish pawns. Well, we have 2 pawns. Behemoth feeds himself, and we could certainly use 2 food. Yes, I think we're going to use 2 food because next turn we will sell all this stuff to the Farmers Guild and get a bunch of food, possibly some money, but either way we'll get some useful things. So these 2 food can be for the 2 pawns. We'll save the sulfur for another time, and pawns are nourished, they don't have to come off the board. We advance the epoch, possibly, I'm pretty sure we're going to. So we're going to take a tile off the large islands. Yep, so that comes off, and we do indeed advance the epoch. So we have 4 epoch 2 tiles showing, which coincides with advancement. So we get to move the marker on to show we are now in epoch 2. Several things are going to happen. We're going to now score the epoch, and then we'll do some replenishing of landscapes, and then we're going to the new round. So, scoring guilds first, and this is kind of where I was worried, because the Queen is in 1, 2, 3 guilds as guildmaster, so she gets 15 points from the guilds. So she's going to be 8 plus 15 is 23. 1, 2. 1, 2. Okay, let's try this again when I'm not being quite so dim. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then a further 10. So that is 13. So yes, 23. Do apologise. Right, and then we are in 2 guilds as guildmasters, so we just get 10 points. That's easy enough to work out on the face of it. And no one is in journeyman anywhere, and that is that, so we don't get any journeyman points. And apprentice is not considered in a 2-player or 3-player game. So we have scored guilds. We now score active regions. So she is not actually in... Oh, she's in 1. Okay. So basically, if you are a ruler, or if you are a landscape tending serf, then you are considered... That region is considered active for you, and you get some points. So we are in 1, 2, 3. So we get 5 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She is in just the 1, so she gets 1 point. Like so. So that is landscapes and active regions. No one has a feudum, so no one has to suffer disloyalty. Queen does not suffer disloyalty anyway, she does not care. And then we can... Oh, I forgot to do landscapes as well, my bad. So active regions and landscapes, in that if you are a landscape tending serf, if the landscape is empty, you get 2 points for it. So she gets a further 2 points. If it had goods on it, it would get 4 points. And then as part of replenishment, you fill it back up again. So she got the 2 points. She cleared all the stuff out earlier, so that's just the 2 points for her. So now landscapes get 3 more. And she's going to clear it out straight away again, because that's what she does. So again, she's going to clear off the butts. 1 to us, 2 to her. So again, I'm quite happy for an influence marker. And then we are going to replenish. So in this case, it's the southern most area of each particular region. So random goods from the haversack, and we place it, so one on the southmost large isles, one on the southmost small isles, so on and so forth. That's a lot of food coming out. I'm sure there are other goods in this bag somewhere. And then Badlands and the mountains. Oh, there's a lot of food. Well, that's good for pilfering anyway. And we're done. So now we go straight into the new epoch. So we're in epoch 2, and basically it plays similar. So I am actually going to put a cut in here, and then pick this up after a short break. And we're back with epoch 2. One thing, or several things I've noticed from the previous epoch, the Queen should not have gained the 1 point from the harvest card. That was an error. I believe it's just for a successful harvest, basically, so she should be docked a point for that. However, she did place out a landscape, and when you place that landscape, that gives you 2 points. So basically, we'll take a point off, but we'll give her 2 points. So not too bad, and we're still tied up anyway, so that's pretty good. And then we need to start picking our actions for the round. So I think the behemoth definitely needs to move as a priority, basically. So we'll pick movement, and then we do have this large gathering of goods on one of our farms, so we'll probably go along and do a guild action and sell them off to the Farmers Guild. And then I believe the Queen got rather more points than I'd like. The epoch scoring for being guildmaster in all those guilds. So what we might try and do then is, what are we looking at? Migrate, that's the one. Migrate a pawn onto the board and see if we can't knock her out of one of the guilds anyway, or at least demote her back down to journeyman status. And then I don't like the look of this knight pawn, but I'm not entirely sure what we can do about it for the time being. So we'll have to see if we're going to move. Are we going to use all of our movement on the behemoth, or are we going to get to move some of our pawns somewhere else and maybe do an influence? Where would he like to go? 1, 2... That's not going to be far enough, to be honest. That might be... is there a... So unfortunately, if he moves this way, there is no flying route out of there, and the bridge looks like it's been destroyed, or there's nothing there for a road route anyway. So, unfortunately... Well, he'll still be out of the way for at least one turn anyway. Of the night, so it's probably useful to use all his movement points and shift him up here, and then work out what to do with them afterwards. In the meantime, then we could do... can't do an explore because we don't rule an outpost. We're not likely to be defending anytime soon. We might want to do attacks and just get some money. That's potentially very useful. Yeah, we'll do attacks, we'll grab some money, and hopefully some better options will open themselves up the next turn afterwards. So let's do... or even a second guild action. No, because that would be repeating the same guild. I was thinking, once we had all the goods in the Farmers Guild, by trading with the Farmers Guild and selling them off to the Farmers Guild, we could then push them out potentially into the Alchemist Guild, Merchants Guild. However, that would be interacting with the same guild twice, and that is not allowed in the same round. So we can't do that. We'll go with the original idea of taxing, and we'll see how that plays out. So that's the 4. We'll do that. Good. So we get to go first. We do have the first player marker back from the Queen, and definitely movement. So off we go. 1, 2, 3. It's a bit wasteful, I think, using all the points on the behemoth, but at least if this knight pawn can only move 2, that will keep him out of the way for the time being. It does mean the rest of them are stuck where they are, unfortunately, but never mind. So that was movement, and the queen is going to influence. Well, okay, so she wasn't going to conquer after all, but never mind. So she has 3 pawns in play, and she will get 3 influence onto the 3 locations, like so. That probably does change things for her somewhat. So she's got 1 on a town, which looking around the board means she gets a +1 in the nobles, so she's up to 2 for that. And she's got 1 and 2 in outposts, and that does not affect her in the slightest. So no more guild status changes for that. Okay, back to us, and then we're going to do a guild trade, and we're going to ship all of the goods from our farm to, oops, the Farmers Guild. So they go over there, plus these 2. Right, so the Farmers Guild can hold basically a maximum of 10 goods. Once you start having extra goods in there, they either overflow and go into the haversack, or if there are rosary beads on the guild, then that is the limit of extra goods that would shift over into the Merchants Guild. And once in the Merchants Guild they get put there, or if the Merchants Guild is full, they then shift over into the Alchemists. And that's as far as they go, they don't go any further than the Alchemists. So 9 is not too bad, and hopefully those will get pushed out at some point, and then that will free up for extra goods in the Farmers Guild. And at the bottom you can see the ratio here is 2 to 1, so basically 2 of anything that you ship will get you either 1 food or 1 shilling from the supply. And we have 9, call it 8, so that is 4 food or 4 shillings or a combination thereof. So, well, we have 4 food. That's going to be good for, well, I think if we were going to migrate another pawn onto the board, we want an extra food for that. Plus we're going to have to feed, so that's going to be 4. And then the turn after that we'll need maybe 3 food. So we'll call it 3 food then and a shilling of our 4 bits and pieces. So let's have a look in the bag. What have we got? We've got, okay, so 1, 2, 3 food, and the rest can go back to the bag. And we get a shilling from the supply. So the goods we picked up do not have to come from the ones we put out, so you don't have to worry about only moving over a bunch of wood, for example, to the Farmers Guild and then having to pull out some food from it. These will come from the haversack, so that is fine. So that was our trade, and yeah, that's not too bad. That's a good amount of food for at least 2 turns, I think, and that's an extra shilling plus the ones we're going to get from taxing is going to be enough to buy some things. Well, we'll see what we can buy later on. So anyway, over to the Queen, who is also going to do a guild action. What is she going to do then? She is going to do a guild pull. She cannot do a guild pull because she is not journeyman in any guilds, so we'll re-roll, and it's going to be a guild trade. Well, there are 6 guilds she can trade with, so Monk's Guild, fair enough. So we come along to the Monk's Guild. We can see that basically the trade action is you spend 3 shillings and you get a high-low choice of the rosary beads. So 3 shillings from her everlasting supply. 1 would go to Guildmaster, who does not exist, 1 goes to the Journeyman, who does not exist, and 1 goes across the board to the Farmers' Coffers. We are definitely going to have to become Guildmaster in the Farmers Guild and push at some point and get a healthy number of coins. Right, anyway, so the Queen wants basically a choice of rosary beads. In the normal game you kind of stick them in your opponent's hands and you pick one. We will be using the die for this, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Die says 2, so she gets a +3. Well, that's fair enough, I suppose. Other one goes back to the rosary chain, and she will get this into her personal supply, and this basically acts as a normal rosary bead in the case of extra goods on the harvest and flipping over to a noble's, king's seal if she does a dishonest act. So that's, well, good for her, possibly bad for us, we shall see. That was her guild action. There's no sequential action on that one, so she does not do a third one straight away. And we get to probably migrate now, before she possibly does a guild push and pushes all these out. I think what we'll do is we'll give up her food to the haversack, and we'll put our third pawn out, and we will make it a farmer's guild pawn. Oh, and I do realise that when the behemoth moved his way up there, he should have pilfered that at the end of his turn. So we'll take that iron and be very grateful for it, I think. Right, so we've migrated a farmer's pawn onto the board. Is that where we want to place it? Basically, we have the option of placing it anywhere we have a pawn or a ruled location, so we could place it over here. I think this is possibly a useful place to put it. Yeah, that looks about as good as any, I think, for the time being. So sure, we'll do that. And this immediately grants us primary point in the Farmers Guild. So we will go ahead and do that. But because we rule farms, how many farms do we rule? 1 and 2. So that's another 2 points, so there's a secondary points, which brings us up to 3. So actually we have pipped the Queen quite happily in the Farmers Guild, and we are now Guildmaster. And I think that's going to come in handy very soon. So great, we'll do that. And on to the Queen's third, and it's a influence. Well, okay, she's, going to influence again. So, 1 from the general supply, I should say, and then 2 from her personal, so she's starting to use those ones up now. And they go out on these locations, and she can quite happily now have subjects in all of the places she rules. That's going to be harder for takeovers, certainly. What do we need? We need a noble pawn, and we need to... or a feudum, even. Okay, that's something to think about next turn, then. And then we have attacks to do, and we get 2 shillings, and a further 1 shilling because we have a second town. So it's 3. Yes, I think we're definitely going to need a couple of king seals for feudums in the very near future. Right, okay. So 4th action done, and the Queen's 4th is hopefully an improve as well. So what would she like to improve first? So outpost to farm, she has several outposts, she can bump one of them to a farm. There is 2 options that she's got available, so we'll do a die roll. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's a 1. So this one will, at no goods cost to her unfortunately, become a farm. That's going to shake things up a bit, I think. And then this was in the desert, so she wants a current or former epoch. There is a current or former epoch, epoch 2. So that is now a landscape tile for herself. It's a sulphur wine. I believe those can be kept secret, so if you don't want your opponents to see which one you picked up, excuse me. If you don't want your opponents to see which one you picked up, you basically keep it face down and keep it secret, but it is really of no consequence to us. So we will see that rather jealously the Queen has got a sulphur mine, and it was, let's see, so it's an Epoch 2 tile, and it was up to a farm, so it's 3 points to the Queen for that. Okay. Well, and that changes guilds as well now, so it's one less outpost, but I don't think she's getting points for that. It is one more farm, and she definitely will want to get points for that. So that's up to 2 in the farmers, and across the board it is indeed up to 2 in the knights. That is, well, that's fair enough. Okay. Right. And we did our 4 actions, the Queen did the 4th, there's no 5th action? No. So we are going to nourish, and I think we're going to use food to nourish all 3 pawns now that we have. And the behemoth can fend for himself, and the Queen does not care. And we roll the progress die. Progress die says, whoops, it is the large isles. The large isles can indeed take a, that is going to be potentially a very quick Epoch 2 into Epoch 3. So we're going to take a current Epoch tile off the large isles, and that is going to go out of the game. And we are indeed 1 tile off, possibly, going into Epoch 3. Well, okay, I think we're okay with guilds then, so we've got the most, we're probably going to get the most guild points, which is not too bad. And possibly the most in regions, 1, 2, 3 regions compared to the Queen's 2. So again, we're going to get points on that. She's going to get a landscape point, however. Okay, I think we're, if it all goes downhill now, and we go into Epoch 3 very quickly, and we do an Epoch score, I think we're okay on scoring. We will have to see. So Queen is going to become first for next round, which means we need to start picking out what we're going to do. The Knight did not chase after us, so we do not have to worry about the Behemoth moving right away. He can probably sit for this round while we do other things. I think maybe a move, and we could still move him, but then we get to move other pawns as well and make better use of them. We did want to buy a King's Seal, I believe, so that would be a guild trade. And we might want to push all this stuff, or most of this stuff, into the merchants. So that would be a second. So that's a repeat. And then once we have a King's Seal, we can flip with an improve a town to a feudum. If we give up a town, we have town points helping us out in the Merchants Guild. We have, nope, that's it, just the Merchants Guild. So we won't lose anything by doing that, and we will gain a feudum, which would greatly help us in probably the Nobles Guild, I think, where the Queen is now sitting there. Or possibly another guild. It doesn't have to be the Nobles. It might be worth going for a feudum in one of our other guilds, for example, the Merchants, which would free up our merchant pawn for being a noble, and then we could do some Starve the People. Yes, that's a possible route anyway. We'll see. We'll have a think when the time comes. So, movement, guild, second guild, improvement. Yes, we'll do that. And then we can maybe start looking at some conquering or something like that. Okay, so we'll do that. And what's the... So if you migrate when you have an alchemist guild, you can place him on a starting space. Does that help us out with getting down here at all? No, is the short answer. That's a shame. We need the boat for that, basically. Well, alright, we needed the boat at some point, so we'll have to make it sooner rather than later, I suspect. Okay, so 4 actions done, no saltpeter, so we can't go 5th, and over to the Queen. Who is going to, oh dear, do another migrate, and this is where things get slightly dicey because now we get the black pawns on the board. And black pawns have, basically, no matter what side they flip up to, they have unlimited attacks. So It's not just knights, it's just all bad, basically. It's not going to be a noble because she's already in the nobles guild, so she wants to be in another guild. It's not going to be a knight. It is going to be a merchant. It is going to be a merchant. So she is coming in to the merchants guild. She is coming in on the small isles. That's very bad. And it's west. So small isles west is going to be there. Oh dear. Alright. So she gets guild status in the merchants guild with at least 1 point. And she takes into account towns. Does she have any towns? She has 1 town, so she gets a second. So it's still not quite enough to bump us out, which is useful. But that's still 1, 2. Yeah, it's 2 moves away, so it can reach us in 1 movement action, and then potentially conquer and yeah. So maybe we need to. This is a dire dead end. I'm terribly sorry for sticking the behemoth there. That's terrible. Right. Okay. So we can move, and we might want to go 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I like the idea of trying to bait these pawns away and set up some kind of trap. However, it's going to take at least 2 rounds of movement unless we play the repeat, in which case it'll take 1 round of movement. But it might be the only way if we can bait these pawns one at a time, coming over here, say, and then get a conquer going. That's not what I wanted to do, but it might have to be, if only to start winnowing down these pawn numbers, because that's now 4 pawns of hers on the board, and it's looking very dodgy for the behemoth, who is probably not going to be able to hold out much longer. If we can get into Epoch 3, things start looking up a bit. Once we're in Epoch 3, the Queen decides that if the behemoth is not dead, she doesn't really care about him too much, and she starts going after us directly. It's just getting into Epoch 3 that's a bit of a problem, because after he's not in danger, we can park him in a corner somewhere and he can potentially sit out the rest of the game, and we won't have to worry about her going after him. But it's getting to that point. Well, okay, let's have a think. So if we do movement, we'll carry on with our plan as we saw fit to. Excuse me a second. Terribly croaky at the moment. We'll do the movement, so we'll go 1, because I think either this pawn or this knight pawn is going to catch up with him no matter what we do. We either move in 1, in which case the knight goes 1, or we move in 2, in which case this pawn goes 1. So either way, he's within 1 movement action. So we'll move in 1, and we'll start heading in this general direction, and hopefully sort something out there later. And in the meantime, we can move this pawn 1, 2, and we'll start getting him down the river over to here, and potentially doing something a bit more useful. Maybe if we move him down here, or we get the boat down here at least, and then we can migrate him off the board, migrate a noble onto the board. We can then pick up the vessel again, come around here, and start having all kinds of conquering shenanigans with the subjects on the southern side of the board. So yeah, we'll try that, and we'll see how that works. Right then. So what we need to do now is do the movement, done, over to the Queen, who is going to carry on improving. She is really about the improving, isn't she? Again, another outpost to a farm, so it's the only outpost she has left, so that's definitely going to flip to a farm. And do that. So then, it is not any points for her this time because it's in the same region as it was before, so it's in the desert region. She cannot take a current epoch tile because they're all future epochs, so she can pick one at random. Basically, she's got 1, 2, 3, 4 former epochs to choose from, so she'll pick one of those. We'll just do 1 to 4 and hopefully 5 and 6 don't come up. Yep, 3 is a valid option, so she'll grab this former epoch tile, and you do not get points for former epoch tiles. So she will still get the landscape, she'll still have an opportunity to put it out, but she will not get any points for it, which is what we like to see. And that does put us straight into epoch 3. So, well, I should say at the end of this round it puts us into epoch 3. So yes, if we can actually get the behemoths out of harm's way for this round, we're fine. And then all we have to worry about is them coming after all our pawns and knocking 7 bells out of us. So fine. Second action for us is going to be a guild, and it's going to be a trade or a push. We'll do a push. We can do a trade at any time, but if the Queen starts getting more influence into the Farmers Guild, we might not have an opportunity to do a push in the future. So we'll do a push now while the option is still available to us, and we'll do it in the Farmers Guild, and we'll get lots of points for all this stuff we're going to move over. So Farmers Guild is 5 goods from the available supply. I think we're going to do 1 saltpeter, 2 food, a sulfur, and that is it. So basically, if you can't move the goods, then it's 5 or less. So we will move this saltpeter over, we'll move the 2 food over, and we'll move the sulfur over. And the stipulation for getting points into filling up the Alchemist Guild is basically rows or columns. So you have to specify whether you're going to score for rows or columns. Now, we completed 2 rows, the saltpeter and the food, and we only completed 1 column, which was the second one in, by putting in this sulfur. So we're going to score rows, basically, and we are going to get 5 points for the 2 rows. So that's not too bad, that's more than we had before. 2, 3, 4, 5. And we could put a reeve in and get an additional point, but I'm going to come back to my earlier point of why this is possibly a bad idea, in that once you start putting reeves into guilds, or you do double movements and you start putting markers into the Epic Journey track, they are then, for the Epic Journey track anyway, stuck there for the whole game. Possibly not for the guild if you get moved out, but it is unlikely at this point with only 2 players that we are going to get knocked out of a guild. So once reeves have gone into this guild, they do not come back out again. And we would like, if we're going to upgrade to a Feudum, to start doing some conquer actions, because otherwise we get marked down by the king and we get disloyalty points if we haven't got enough conquer actions to satisfy him. And these are a huge chunk of negative points at the end of the game, certainly. So I think we're going to save all of our tokens, and once we get a Feudum, then we're going to start chucking them into the conquer spaces with conquer actions and not have to worry about losing points that way. So yeah, okay, so that was the push. We got the points for the push, and we're done. So over to the Queen for her 3rd action, who is going to do a conquer, and we are not there. Good, excellent. That's fine by me. So yeah, she, if he had moved and gotten to the behemoth, that would have been basically straight out, and she gets a whole bunch of points for that. But she is not going to conquer, she's not going to touch any of our stuff, she's not going to go starve the people, so what does she do instead then? Migrate. Oh, that's less, well, it's not losing the behemoth, but it's still not something we want to see. That is not a valid pawn. Nope. She's got basically one of two options. I'm just going to roll a die and stop faffing around with this thing. So 5, what is she missing? She's missing alchemists, which would have been 1, 2, 3, and she's also missing Monk's Guild, which would have been 4, 5, 6. So she can go into the Monk's Guild, and she is in the East Mountains, which is over here. Oh, next to a horse. How nice. And she gets guild status for that, so she is now in pretty much the maximum amount of guild she's going to be unless she starts going up to feudums, which is certainly likely. And she wants to see outposts. She does not have any more outposts that she rules, so it's just the 1 point in the Monk's Guild. But this is incredibly annoying now. She's going to get 15 points plus a further 3, so 21 points on the epoch score, which is coming up now basically. We have to do something about that because that is an unhealthy amount of points for her to get. Right, so if we repeat, and now we do the trade, which we can safely do, and we'll trade with the Nobles Guild. So you can either give 3 shillings up and get 1 seal, or 6 shillings and get 2 seals. We do have 6 shillings. We could give them up and get the 2 seals remaining, but I think we'll save some of them. We only need 1 of them for the time being to do improve. So we'll do that and we'll see how it goes. So 1 unfortunately goes to the Queen because she is Guildmaster, 1 goes out because there is no journeyman, and then 1 goes across to the farmers. Oh, I forgot to do the farmers moving around of funds. So let me assign these quickly to the relevant parties, and that one will just go off to one side, and we'll do this now. So when you do the push in the Farmers Guild, or when you do the push in the Monks Guild, anything that's sitting in the charity spaces gets doled out basically. So 1 goes to Guildmaster, which happily is us. 1 goes to the Journeyman, which is the Queen, and then you carry on and do it again. So we will get 2 of the 3 shillings there, which isn't bad. That's, yeah, pretty good. And then the 1 that we just did in the trade will now go in and start filling this back up again. So that is still probably not going to affect how many king seals we buy, so I'm happy with that. And we basically get to pick one of the, pick this one I think, one of the king seals and place it in our area for use very soon in getting ourselves a feudum. Queen's 4th action, and it's a move, so yeah, I'm happy those came out the way they did. Things still move towards the behemoth, so he's not quite out the woods just yet. So this guy goes 1 and stops, this guy goes 1, 2 and stops, and then we've got 1, 2 is the shortest route I believe, and this guy trails along behind, and as does this one, 2. I think that's probably, yeah, that's southern route is probably the quickest way to get to the behemoth compared to faffing around with all this middle territory. So they all go like that. So potentially if the Queen gets an early conquer next round and he has not moved on, then again say goodbye to the behemoth. So I think our first action will have to be another move, unfortunately, but we needed to move anyway, so yeah, that's fine. I don't mind that at all. And then we do an improve as our 4th action. So we are definitely going to flip over with the King Seal our town into a feudum. So King Seal goes back to the supply, and now we have 6 to choose from. Basically you get the 6 guilds and you can build a feudum to one of the 6 guilds, which gives you 3 points straight up, as primary points, so it's an incredibly good way of getting into guilds. And then you get the modifiers from ruling locations as normal. So which guild would we like to pip the queen into? Probably one of these three, because with the epoch score coming up, that means that we get the lion's share of the points compared to her. And it would not be a bad idea having a bunch of secondary points we can rely on as well. So maybe the nobles, because we would have a town left over, or the knights because we would have a farm left over. Or the monks because she's only got 1 point in it anyway, and that's not too bad. I like the idea of potentially going into the Knights Guild, and well, maybe not then, because if we push barrels basically over to the Nobles Guild, we're not going to be filling up too many of these rows, I don't think. I'm going to go for the Monks Guild. We'll go for the Monks Guild Feudum. So we grab that from the supply, and we can upgrade one of our towns. We need to start influencing more locations, I think. We can upgrade one of our towns to a Feudum, and this one seems healthily out of the way at the moment, that it's not going to get a bunch of marauding queen's pawns jumping all over it and looking to conquer it. So we'll do that. And that can go back to the supply. So we upgrade to a Feudum. It's in the Badlands. It would be this tile. Right, actually that's something to think about. We can take not a future epoch tile, and we're still in epoch 2, so we can't take an epoch 3 tile. So basically we get another one to pick from, but we don't get the points for it. In that case then, did we want to upgrade this one in the wooded areas, which would be this tile here, and we get less points because it's only a epoch 1 tile, but at least we get some points. And then the Feudum will be here instead. Well, alright, scratch the previous comment about not necessarily putting it in harm's way, we'll do that. Excuse me. And excuse me. Terribly sorry. Just can't seem to shake this cough at the moment. It's holiday lurgy, I think. We'll do that, and we'll hopefully move these pawns out of the way in time, that stuff does not start accumulating around here and potentially knock that Feudum out. So fine, we'll do that. And then we get this landscape as a reward, and we can see that it is a shillings mine. Well, it's better than nothing. And because it was an epoch 1 tile and we were upgrading to Feudum, we get 4 points. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So that was our improve. And now we need to start doing guild stuff. I don't know what's going on with this cough, sorry. We need to put a marker into the Nobles Guild. And Feudums get us 3 points straight away. And we do not have any outposts that we rule, so we're not going to get additional points. But that is more than enough to beat the Queen into Guildmaster position. However, we did lose a town in doing this. So we need to adjust the Merchants Guild, and we go down by 1. And the Queen is not currently beating us, it's still technically a tie, so we don't have to actually lose Guildmaster status in the Alchemist Guild, so that's fine. Happy to see that. And that's all done. So we did our 4, Queen did her 4, so actually we come to the end of the round. So again, nourish pawns. Again, 3 food. We're running out of food. I did not take that into account when I planned things through this round. Okay, we might have to do a quick stop at the Merchants Guild next round and buy a bunch of food. Well, we'll do 2 food, and we'll do a sulphur from our barrel. So that lot can go, and that will be the 3 pawns. And we'll get this guy drunk, who is possibly going to come off the board very soon anyway. Is that worth it then? If he's going to come off the board very soon anyway. Actually, unfortunately we have to feed him if we can do. The rules do stipulate that if you have the resources to nourish pawns, you have to nourish pawns. You can't willfully starve them. However, if we happen to run out of stuff and in a future round, then this guy could quite happily starve himself off the board, and we won't have to worry too much about then wasting a migrate action to bring him off anyway. So that being said then, let's just nourish one of these guys and keep it at that, and then this guy might come off next round when the next round of nourishes goes through. So nourished, we roll the progress die. It is small isles. We can take a small isle tile off. So that is gone. And we are going into a new epoch. So epoch moves on to 3. And let's do some scoring then. So score guilds. Well, we are ahead in 1, 2, 3, and now 4. Thanks to that late Feudum. So we get 20 points, and yep, we're not journeyman anywhere, so just the 20 points. So 36 up to 56. So the queen is 3, 6, and then 9, and then a further 10. So a total of 19, I believe that is. 3, 6, 9, and then 10 is 19. Yep, so she's going to get 19 points for the guilds. So we'll give her 20, and then we'll take off 1. And that's 19. So we did come out just about ahead in the guild score. That's pretty good. Happy to see that. We now do landscapes. So she does have an unfilled landscape, basically. So she gets 2 points for that. And we do not have any. Now we do active regions. So she is active in 1 region. And then a 2nd region. Yep, because she's not only ruling, but also landscape tending as well. So she gets 3 points for that. 2, 3. And we are active in 3 regions, I believe we said. So 1, 2, 3. We need to start looking at getting active in more regions. So that's 5 points anyway. Okay. We do not subtract disloyalty yet, fortunately. You only score disloyalty in epochs 2, 4, and the 5th epoch. So we have a feudum. We do not yet have any conquer markers there. So by the time epoch 4 rolls around, we definitely have to fill up these 2. Otherwise we're going to lose 7 points, and that's bad. And then by the time epoch 5 rolls around, we have to fill up all 3 or we lose even more points. So yeah. Replenish landscapes, which is very useful for us actually, because that means that the queen is again going to grab everything. So she's going to take all the archery butts straight off the tile, which is 2 to her, but she is now maxed out on the ones that she can collect. So she does not... Oh, she does have... Don't know what that's doing floating around there, but she does seem to have a spare one, so that one will go to her, and now she is maxed out, and we get the 1 anyway. So it's a slow and steady drip of influence markers, which is quite good actually. It means we don't have to visit the Knights Guild and start messing around there. So yeah, I'm happy to see that. And that's her landscape replenish, and now we need to replenish the map as well. And epoch 3 is east. So every east location in every region gets a good. So let's see. That's East Large Isles. Where's the Small Isles one? This one over here. We have that and that over there, and then the 2, so Badlands and the mountains. So stuff is filling up, and we're not really taking it off with migrates, which we might with moves. So I might need to do that at some point and get some pilfers going. That might solve our food problem, maybe. Anyway. And then in Epoch 3, and this is only in Epoch 3, so you don't have to worry about this throughout the game, you replenish the guilds, and this is all guilds. So if there is stuff there already, you do not have to worry about it. If there is not stuff there, and there should be based on the setup of the game, then you do have to stick stuff in. And I am going to have to fiddle with the rulebook at this point because I do not recall exactly what there should be in each of the guilds. That might be something that... anyway, so just give me a second. Right, looking at the front of the rulebook, it states that we should have a bunch more saltpeter in the Alchemist Guild. So, let's do that. That's 3 saltpeter there. Everything else looks to be at normal levels. That's good. We should have one more sulfur in the Alchemist Guild. And this is all coming from the hammer sack, so that's fine. It's not something we have to worry about getting levels for. And then a couple more King Seals in the Nobles Guild. So 1, 2, 3. And that's fine. Monk's Guild is up to date, and there's nothing we can do about... Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So there should be, I believe, and I'm not 100% on this, there should be 2 of our markers now in the Knights Guild. I mean, the setup does state that you fill up the first 2 rows with markers. The Queen cannot put any in because they're all in her personal supply, but we have a couple, or some anyway, in the general supply. So I'm going to say that those are supposed to go into the Knights Guild, and that's fine. We'll leave it at that. And fine. So that's everything. Everything that's at normal levels or above. So we can go into the beginning of Epoch 3 now. Let's think then. So we are going to get to go first. And we want to move the Behemoth because he's in a bit of danger. And we can also get this guy moving and trundling along. We want to probably do a guild and buy some food. We've got 1 food. I know we want at least 1 more food, and then this guy can happily come off the board due to non-nourishment. So if he comes 1 space 2 and stops there. So if he comes there, comes off the vessel and hopefully abandons it. And then we can probably the turn afterwards migrate someone out to, or even, yeah, migrate someone out to there. Ah, that's the rub. So in order to utilize the migration ability of the Alchemist pawn, where you get to place new pawns onto starting spaces, he actually has to be on the board. So if he comes off, then he is no longer there to give that benefit to us. So maybe an influence then. So let's do an influence. So if he comes over here and then he influences, then we can, once he's gone, safely put something there because there'll be a marker there to influence the location. And we need to have more influence in more regions anyway, so that's fine. I'm not unhappy about that bit. So a move, an influence, buy some food, or is there a better way to get food? Well, if there is, I'm not really seeing it at the moment without doing a whole bunch of pilfering, and that's unnecessary movement, really. And then possibly an improve, because if we're going to drop out an influence here, we're going to have 1 more farm, so we could maybe give up 1 of our farms and turn it into a town. and that will be some more points and landscape options and the like. So yes, we'll do that, and then we don't want to necessarily repeat everything or anything. We don't have any outposts to get writs. We should start looking at getting writs at some point. So that's going to be having to influence an outpost and getting some writs from that. Migrate can wait till turn afterwards. Taxing, we've got plenty of money, so that's okay. Defending, conquering is going to have to wait for a turn. And harvesting, maybe as well wait for a turn. Or we could harvest instead of guild trading, because we're going to have a large number of farms, so that's quite a number of goods that are going to come out the haversack, and we have a farmer's pawn in play, so that's going to be a kickback that we can actively choose. So that is also a good way of getting food. Okay, well that's one round we're not going to use the guild option for. Fair enough. And we're starting. So, movement, I believe, is definitely the first order of play. So this guy is going to go 1, and this is a location on the line, so you have to count that as a movement. It is not reached by anything other than the river, but that's still the case. So 1, and then down here for 2, and we'll just plonk him there. And, well, you never know, he might be conquered off the board very quickly instead. And then we'll use our third point of movement for the behemoth, so he can come up here, and then he will not be bothered by anything else for the time being, because they're not going to come back up the map after him. They're going to start moving towards the horse, which is going to start moving towards our pawns. So that's fair enough. And we have a fourth point of movement, actually. One I had not taken into account. Well, if we do an influence, we're going to influence there. And actually, we might want to then possibly move a pawn here. And we could then influence this location, and that would set us up for some explores later on and getting some royal writ cards. So yeah. And at the end of our movement, we have 1, 2 pilferable options. So a sulphur or a wood. Well, possibly the sulphur then. And that can be some wine later on. I think we'll stick that straight into the wine barrel. And yeah, we'll do that. Wood, potentially useful for improving, but I'm not too fussed about it at the time being. So yeah, I think we'll do that. Okay, so that was our movement and our 1 pilfer. And then the queen is going to do a migrate. She is not. She has all 5 pawns on the board, so she cannot migrate anymore, which, let's see, it's going to be moved now, isn't it? That's annoying. So she moves towards the closest pawn, or feudum. In either case, I think it's this one. Let's see, from the horse, basically. So the horse is going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 to reach there. Likewise, he does not care about roads and rivers and the like. They do not impede him whatsoever. This is actually 1, 2, 3. This would be 1, 2, also 3. Okay, so he has a number of choices. So we basically roll a die, and we see that should specify first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think the top option, but oh well, okay. After specifying the bottom option, so we'll go with that. And he's therefore going to go 1 movement. No, we said it was this way around, wasn't it? 1 movement, 2 movement, 3 movement. So he's going to go there, and then everything else moves 3 to catch up with him, basically. So this guy's going to go 1. I think they're all going to end up here. 1, 2, that's 2. This is just the one. This would be 2. So everyone is now all clumped round our very unhappy alchemist. And yeah, this is what dispersal actions are for, so hopefully the Queen will be very kind and draw a dispersal action incredibly quickly and get rid of all these out of our way. But, okay, well let's hurry up then and do an influence while we still have some guy that can actually influence that location. So 1 influence, 2 influence, and we could do a 3rd and we could influence here and get a subject out, but I don't believe we want to do so. We've got few enough markers now that I think we're quite happy at not necessarily doing an influence, so I'll leave it at that. And then we're going to come on to the Queen's second action, which is going to be a guild. So she is going to roll the die and do a guild push, and she can definitely do a guild push. She's got 3 options to choose from, so we will go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 it is, so that would be the Nobles Guild. So she is going to do, oh no, she can't. So it would have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, I misread the situation. I thought she was still Guild Master in the Monks Guild. So she can do a push with the Nobles Guild. So basically she takes 2 guild seals, and again, well, we'll go with these ones, and they get flipped up, and she's definitely going to get probably 17 value worth of these. So that 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, not quite, 16. So she is 1 short of the 17 threshold. So she only gets 5 points. Only 5 points, I should say. So that's that. Okay, well, fair enough. So that was her guild action, which leaves us with a 3rd one to do, and I think we are now going to... I did say we were going to upgrade... do an improvement, but I think we'll do a harvest first, and we'll take advantage of this extra farm while we still have it, before we improve it up to a town. So, let's do the harvest. We get a point on the card. We get to pick, let's see, so we've got 5 as a base, we've got 2 extra farms, 1, 2, 3, so yeah, 1 farm is the base 5, and then 2 extras is a total of 7. So we need 7 goods from the haversack. That is 4, and then a further, if I can get just 3 out the bag, small cubes, 7. So there are our 7, and we get a kickback of 2, and we don't have to worry about flipping over any rosary beads because we have none of them, so we can take it with impunity. And we get to pick the 2 that we grab because we have the farmer's pawn in play. Well, I think saltpeter might be a very good idea, because we are coming up to probably wanting to do a bunch of actions now. So 5 actions a turn for the next 2 rounds might be incredibly useful. So yes, we'll grab those. And these can go on a farm, and these can go on this out the way farm over here, which also has an iron on it, so that adds to the whole farm. And that can now possibly get traded at some point for extra food. So yeah, I'm happy with that. That's fine. We got the point, we got the kickbacks, we got the saltpeter. Yep, we're all good. So, harvest done. Over to the Queen, who is going to conquer. Well, the guy was going to die off anyway, so unfortunately it does mean we have to give the Queen some points for it, but never mind. So basically, she has not the behemoth in her sights, or the sea serpent, or a feudum. So it's just the pawn that she will go after, and she does a conquer. So there is no defence against this. I mean, even if we didn't have black pawns and knights clogging up the works with their infinite saltpeter, there is no defence against 5 pawns worth. even with this guy's a defense of 2. So he comes off, back to us, which is fine. He was going to do that anyway. Does give the queen 2 points, unfortunately. So she will get 2 points, which almost ties up our score. And yeah, that's okay. I'm not unhappy about that too terribly much. So fine. And then our fourth is going to be an improve, and we have some spare iron kicking around, which we can use to move a farm up to a town. This farm is probably never going to get stuff placed on it. Oh, okay. I should have realised that when the queen did her move and clustered everyone around here, she was eligible to do a pilfer. So this wood that was there can be pilfered off and go into a supply. This is a useful point because when you do an improvement from a farm to a town, anything that was technically part of the farm's harvest, even if it was stuff that was there beforehand and still happened to stick around, gets moved off into the haversack. So there is no residual goods if it goes up to a town. So the queen would have happily had that wood before it got lost to the haversack. So she will do that. And now we can improve to a town. So that flips. Nope, it gets replaced. So that's our town. That is our iron that we used. So yeah, that's fine. And we get the landscape tile, which is going to be desert. It's one we can now take because it's epoch 3. So we can take a current epoch tile. And another shilling mine. We could really use some of these sulfur mines, but they're just not coming up. Alright, fair enough. And that looks like we're going to be moving into epoch 4 relatively quickly then if one of these gets taken off, but we'll see. Anyway, so it was an epoch 3 tile, and it was up to a town, so that's 5 points. Well, I'm not unhappy about that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So we're just barely staying ahead of the queen. We do have the most in the guilds at the moment, but she is gaining a lot of momentum with these pawns. So if they stay clumped up, taking them off the board is not an option. There is no way to for us to get enough attack in one location to successfully win a pawn war. So she's going to have to disperse them, and then we're going to have to figure out something to do about that. But at the moment, this group can follow the horse around quite happily and knock out everything we have. But there we go, that's that. So we did the improve. Queen does a 4th action, which is a tax. Can she tax? She can tax. She has 1 town, so she can definitely tax. So, and it's going to lead into a 5th action. Oh, that's a shame. Well, okay. So just the 1 town, so she doesn't get bonus money from it, but she gets 2 silver, and this goes into a personal supply. This silver does not mean she has to buy anything with it, basically. It just sits there, and then it's points at the end of the game, pretty much. So that's that. Huh. Well, okay. And then she's going to do a 5th action because the card has a saltpeter on it. And it's going to be another tax. Okay, well, she'll tax again then. So, more money, more points, fair enough. And now she is all done. So we're at the end of Epoch 3. We did not do a conquer. We need to start thinking about conquering. Next round, we might very well do a conquer if we can get a noble pawn out, have it move round, do a starve the people. Yes, we'll have to think about that. We need to do several starve the peoples, actually. There are, fortunately, enough subjects lying around the board that we can do that, so sure. Right, end of round. Take action to do that. So nourish pawns, well, nope, we're fine, we're still fine. So 1 food to feed this farmer's pawn. This sulfur/wine comes off this pawn, so that's now nourished. So those guys are good for the nourishment. We do not have any food. Okay, we might have to do a quick trade next round then to get food to get another pawn out on the board. So we shall have to see. Roll the progress die. Hopefully we won't go into the next epoch. That's not the progress die, that's the fate die. That's the progress die. Oh, how's that going to work out then? Alright, well we're into Epoch 4. We uncovered a current epoch from the Badlands. So that goes out the game. This is now triggering the 4th epoch because we have 2 tiles uncovered. That's a whole swath of points we're going to lose. This is not good at all. Well, anyway. So guilds are scored. Similarly, before we have 1, 2, 3, 4 guilds we're guildmaster of, so that's 20 points. So that's going to be 67 up to 87. Jolly good. Queen is again a 19, I think. 1, 2, 3 journeymen and 2 guildmasters is indeed 19. Have I... Let me think, because I did do a improve and this changed things about. So this was a farm. So I'm going to lose 1 point for the Farmers Guild. That's fine, that doesn't affect things. And that's the only thing that's bothered by farms for us. And now it's a town, and we're going to get 1 point in the Merchants Guild. So that is fine, that's still not changing anything. No, so that's the changes to the guild statuses, and they don't actually change levels, so that's fine. Yeah, you can quite easily miss several improvements and guild point changes and bits and pieces all over the board. So the Queen's going to get 19 points, which again is going to be up to 80, I believe. 61 plus 19 is indeed 80. So, yep, that's that. Landscapes, she does have an unfilled landscape, so that's 2 more there. We really could probably start using some of these shilling mines to get some landscape points anyway, if nothing else. Then active regions, so I think we'll get a bit more on this one now. So Queen is in 1, 2 active regions, so 3 points. We are now in hopefully 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is 7 points. I believe 5 is not, yeah, 7 points. So 1, 2, 3, and then a further 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's enough to outweigh our disloyalty anyway, which is coming up right now. So subtract victory points for disloyalty. In Epoch 4 we do the disloyalty penalty, and unfortunately we are going to score disloyalty points for these 2 spaces. So -3, -4 is a total of -7. Oh ho hum. Okay, well, back down then. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So still minorly ahead in the lead, but we are going to have to start doing some conquers and getting these spaces filled up, because scoring for Epoch 5, losing 12 points, I suspect is not an option. And then replenish. So, yep, disloyalty scored. So replenish. Again, archery butts go out, archery butts go back in again. Queen does not pick up a marker, but we will, however. So we've probably got enough markers, to be honest, to last us the rest of the game without having to worry about trading with the Knights Guild. We need to replenish the map. We do indeed. So in Epoch 4, we replenish west in every region. So let's see. Small isles, large isles. Some of these may clump up. For example, in the small isles, you've got south and west in exactly the same place. So you may find you're putting stuff out where you just placed out previously, but that's fine. And also in the desert, south and west are also the same location. And then we just need Badlands, which is over here, and the mountains, which is there. Oh, that adds to our farm. That's not necessarily useful, because unfortunately it it's 7, so it's not an even number for purposes of turning it into the Farmers Guild, but it's still an extra good, so fair enough. And we replenish, so that's all done. And now we go on to playing Epoch 4. So I think I'm going to put another break in here, and then that should be one more session where we do Epoch 4 and scoring Epoch 5 and then final scoring. So back in a bit. Okay, back with the beginning of Epoch 4. Queen gets to go first, so we'll give her first player marker. And having had a look at the state of things, especially this block of pawns in the guilds, it's probably a good idea to try and force an early Epoch 5. These aren't going to go anywhere anytime soon. Unless they get dispersed, they're going to keep trundling around and wrecking all our stuff. And while we are currently in the lead on guilds and guild statuses, that is probably not going to last. The Queen has been rather lax in influencing various locations, and that will most likely change, if not immediately, at least in the near future. And therefore that's going to boost our status up in the guilds and cut down on our points. So, I think an early Epoch 5, while we still have a marginal lead in points, is probably going to serve us better than keeping things going as they are and just basically trying to get points through usual strategies. So, we're going to want a migrate, I think, to get a noble pawn on the board. Then if we move and do a conquer, that will hopefully, well, I say conquer, it's probably going to be a starve the people, that will hopefully cut down somewhat on the disloyalty points we get because we have the Feudum. And then we need some food in order to do a migrate, so was it going to be a guild or possibly a harvest in order to get some kickbacks? That would get us the point, to be honest. A guild would mean we'd have to spend money on the food. I think the harvest is probably a better idea. Yes, indeed. And then if we play a saltpeter, we'll have a 5th action, and we could do something which gets us even more points. Well, maybe an explore. We have an outpost, so it might be worth getting a look at some of those Royal Rick cards that I've been mentioning in the game but have never actually come up yet. The Queen has completely ignored them whatsoever, and so have I, so there we go. So yeah, it might be worth getting some Royal Rick cards, and if they were of any use to us, they would probably need to be charters, which means that's end of game points. But in order to score charters, you have to have a king seal, which seals it basically and makes it available for points. So we do not have king seals. We probably do not have the actions to get king seals. So, alright, on the face of it then, not an explore. Excuse me. If the game goes to a second round, because the Queen mucks around with our plans, then we might do explore then and try and do that. So, oh yes, that was what it was. It was going to be an improve, because that's how we're going to force the game into a quick 5th epoch. Yep, that was it. It was going to be improve, harvest, conquer. Right, now I remember. Okay. So that's our plans. That's our saltpeter for the 5th action, and we're going to go Queen first. So hopefully nothing too terrible. It's a migrate. It's not a migrate because she's got all 5 out on the board, so it's going to be a move. Well, that is going to annoy me because it means she's going towards the nearest pawn / Feudum in this case, I suspect, because that's 1, 2, 3. This one is just, well, maybe a bit further. 1, 2. That's slightly further actually, unless we go. How is this all shaking out? 1, That's a flying route. 1, 2, 3. She can use fairy routes without worrying about paying costs or anything, and they are always open to her. So one more time. 1, 2, and 3, or 1, 2 either way, 2, 3. So these are both within equal distance of the horse. So there's a random option. I hope she goes for probably this one. I think is the better bet, but we'll see. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's a 1. It is indeed the one we hoped for anyway. So 1, 2, either way, 3. And that means that this block follows up behind and parks itself right outside the merchant pawn there. Right, well that's okay, that got it away from this location, which is where we're going to start sticking our noble pawn, and we didn't want that to get conquered off the board, so if we have to lose the the merchant pawn, then it's not the end of the world, basically. So first action, harvest, and we have, let's see, 1, 2 farms plus a feudum, so 5, 6, 7, 8. No, that's terrible maths. 7. 2 farms, so base of 5, 6, and then 7 for the feudum is indeed 7. So we need 7 goods at random from the bag, and hopefully one of them will at least be a food. Well, yep, that's food. 2, 3 more. Okay, so a mix of goods. It doesn't particularly matter which one we plonk them on at this point. We can still put them on this one. There is a harvesting limit of 10 goods for a farm, so basically once you have 10 goods in a farm location you can't harvest again for it, but you can harvest even if it's 9 beyond that limit. So we could plonk them all there. We're not going to do anything with them, I don't think, so we'll chuck them all in that location there. We do get 2 kickbacks, so one is definitely a food, and the second one may as well be a food. Do we need it for much else? Yeah, we'll go for another food. I don't think we'll have much use of it beyond this turn, but it doesn't hurt. So we'll go for a second food. So that was our 2 kickbacks. We get a point for the harvest, like so. Queen's second action is an influence. Okay. And she gets a third one straight away. This could be interesting. So influence brings a serf into our area. Still not a new area for the queen. She would have to be tending a landscape in order to be there. She might well do that now on this next action, in fact. And even though there are 5 pawns in this location, you can't influence more than once in any given location. So she could bung out maximum pawns there straight away. But she can certainly conquer, which is a bit of a shame. So this block of pawns is going to quite happily... Oh, that's going to affect guild status. Oh dear. Oh, well, there's nothing we can do about it now. Maybe forcing an early Epoch 5 is not the best idea then. Well, anyway. Pawn comes off. She can't attack ruled areas unless they are feudums. So that outpost is fine for the time being, but the pawn definitely comes off the board. She gets 2 points for it. 1, 2, so that's cutting into our lead. And because we have lost the merchant's pawn, we now lose entire status in the merchant's guild whatsoever. We have no primary source of points. So our marker goes out, she moves up by definition of default, basically. We do get the influence marker back. That is going to hurt. That is going to be possibly about even on guild points now, without doing a calculation of the amount of points. I think it's about, well, less points for us, certainly. So, oh dear. Well, we'll still go ahead. We'll still keep going. So that was her second and third. We now have a migrate to do. So we're going to get a food back to the haversack, and we're going to stick a noble pawn straight out, and we can go on the vehicle as a free embark. So we'll do that. And does that change? So we're into the Nobles Guild, so that's actually not too bad. We now have journeyman status at least, with 1 point. And then it's ruled towns. So 1, 2. Yeah, that's 3 points worth of guild. So 2 towns plus the pawn is indeed 3 points in the Nobles Guild, and that does actually boost us up to Guildmaster. So that's a happier side. I hadn't counted on that whatsoever. So yeah, that's quite happy to see that. Makes up for our loss before. Over to the Queen, who is going to hopefully just do a 4th, and no, it's going to be a 5th. Oh, explore. So she's going to finally get a... is she? No, she has not got an outpost. She is very lax at these outposts, isn't she? So she should be drawing an explore card, a rip card, but because she is not ruling an outpost, she does not do a rip card. So she can't do an explore. She does a harvest. She can do a harvest. She's got several farms which she can harvest with. So she will certainly do that. And let's see. This one is her most bountiful farm. So basically she wants to accumulate as many goods as possible in one particular location. So this farm, and she has... what does she have? 1 farm, a 2nd farm, just the 2 farms. So it's 6 goods from the bag, basically. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So 6 goods from the farm, and she will always take the kickback. She is not particularly honest. So it's going to be 1 good, and because it's going into the Queen's supply and she doesn't particularly care about goods, it doesn't particularly match which one she takes, but I think it's still random, because the goods that are left are pilferable by yourself, so it may matter which one is left on the farm. So we'll do basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and number 2. So this one is the one that got kicked back. The other 5 go onto a farm and sit there waiting for either to be traded to the Farmers Guild or pilfered by yourself. Okay. And it was a harvest action. It wasn't a harvest card, but it was a harvest action, so I think that's a point in her favour. So tied up there. And she does do a 5th action at the end, because that... well, interesting. That particular card did have a saltpeter on it, but the action she played did not. Well, the card had a saltpeter, so I'm going to give it a 5th action. But that's an interesting question to ponder. And we need to be doing a movement. So we have this noble pawn going 1, and we have 2 other movement points we could do. And it might be worth getting this guy out of harm's way, especially away from the Feudum. So if we go 1, 2, and do that. So the horse will always follow after pawns, and Feudum's last, but if it ends up where there is a pawn and a Feudum, then a subsequent conquer will try and knock out the Feudum instead, because it gets the most points from it. So we don't want to clump them up. Basically, we'll lead them away with the pawn, and then the Feudum is safe for the time being anyway. So that was our movement. We need to be doing a 5th and final action with the Queen, which is another influence. Ah, that's interesting. So she's going to double influence here, and this basically knocks us now down to surf level, which is fine. We've still got ruling areas in the region, so that's not too bad. It's opened up a possible location where we could tend a landscape, and yeah, it's not the end of the world. Unfortunately, there's 1 less point for end of game scoring, but never mind. So that was her final action. Now it's up to us to finish up and hopefully end the epoch. So we need to do a conquer, and we're not conquering any pawns, we're not conquering any feudums, we are going to starve the people instead. We do have a noble pawn where there is a subject, or a serf, but a subject in this case. So that will go off the board, back to the queen. No points for that, unfortunately. Oh, and I forgot to pilfer when we finished our movement here. So we'll grab, doesn't particularly matter I don't think, but we'll grab an iron. Right, so that was the conquer, the switch off, but more importantly it does give us a disc for the loyalty track, as it were. So we don't lose at least 3 points at the end of the game, but we're still going to lose 9, I think. Hopefully the way things are, that kind of shakes out in our favour. I had a look at the points beforehand and figured out that we were probably going to come out ahead, all things being equal. Now we've had a bit of a shake-up with the round, I'm not quite so sure, but we'll carry on and we'll see how it goes. We had to play the conquer then, because it cannot be the last card that you play. So it had to be then. And we'll do finally an improve as our last card. The queen's all finished with her actions. So we will improve with our iron. Did I? Huh. I think I definitely needed that iron at some point for the improvement, and I did not plan to get it. So that was lucky on my part that I happened to get it by sheer luck, basically. So yes, we do need that iron for the improvement, because what we're going to do is improve this farm over here in the Badlands to a town, like so. So iron goes back to the haversack, we get a town, and the reason for that is because now we get to take this epoch tile. We're in epoch 4, so it's an eligible tile, it's the right landscape location, so we grab that and we add it. It's food. Okay, well, orchards are good, but not in this case. And now we get Epoch 5 showing, so at the end of the round we go straight into Epoch 5 and do the various bits and pieces there. We do get, however, let's see, the tile was Epoch 4, and it was a town. So 6 points for the improvement. That's not bad, actually. 2, 4, 5... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Can't count for anything at the moment. So yeah, that was improved. That was our action, and we were all done. So we get to nourish pawns, and this is the bit I wasn't particularly fussed about if we were going for an early Epoch 5, because these guys can happily come off the board and not worry about any more actions. You don't score points for pawns either way. Oh, no, you do, because that's guild status. Alright, well, this food is going to nourish that pawn. This sulphur then is going to nourish that pawn. I'm misplaying all over the place and being incredibly lucky about it, I think. And I should have remembered that we needed to adjust guild status, and again I forget. So that is one more town, which is 4 points in the Nobles Guild. And do any of these count towns? Nope. And then one less farm, which is going to knock us down in the Farmers Guild, unfortunately. Because it's just the Farmers pawn we have in play, indeed it is. And nothing else requires farms for us? Nope, okay. So, yeah, points changes all over the place. Alright, pawns have been nourished, guild statuses should be up to date. Roll the progress die, not that it makes a whole bunch of difference, but it can certainly take off that tile for the woodlands. And then, because we're in Epoch 5 now, we're advancing the Epoch marker. So we score epochs yet again. We score guilds. So let's see, this is going to be interesting. 5, 10, and then 15, plus another 6, 21, I believe. 5, 10, 15, 18, 21. So yes, the Queen is going to get 21 points from guilds. So that would be, oh dear, 1, 2, 12, 22, and then back 1 for 21. I think that's the way this is going to work. We are going to get, and this is less points than I suspected, I believe, which may tip things, 3 and 5 is 8, plus another 5 would be 13, plus a further 5 is 18. So 1, 11, 16, 17, 18. That is less points than I suspected. Alright, well, we're going to do landscapes. The Queen gets 2 for her empty landscape, so that is just 2 points. We have no landscape, so no points there. Active regions, and this again is going to possibly change with the Queen getting slightly more points. So 1, 2 there, and then 3 here. So she is going to get 5 points for that. And then we are going to get 1, 2, 3, 4. So we get the 7 we had before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so just ahead then. Landscapes, active regions. Now this is the bit we're going to get disloyalty points. So 9 points are going to be lost because we're in the final epoch of scoring disloyalty. So we lose 9 points. That is 4, and then a further 5 for 9 in total. We replenish landscapes. We can probably, well, not necessarily skip this because some of the stuff you might be getting from your landscapes, if you immediately grab them, may give you points at the end of the game. So the Queen is going to do that. She's going to immediately take it all off, which is going to convert into 0 markers for her because she's got her maximum markers, but 1 for us. That's not going to help us at all, but never mind. We don't replenish the map because we're going into Epoch 5. We don't replenish the guild because we're not in Epoch 3 anymore. And we're done. We're done with the end of the game. So now we go to final scoring. So then, let's have a look at, just have it on. So, score the end of the game. Here we go. Epic Voyage. Well, no one, the Queen does not bother with Epic Voyage, but we certainly did not do it either. So no one gets Epic Voyage points. If I'd known I was going to have so few markers in Conquering, I maybe would have given one at some point into Epic Voyage. But, alas. So we don't get any points, 3, 5, 7, 9 or otherwise for that, unfortunately. Large outposts, so basically you tally up everywhere you rule. So the Queen is going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, just 4 I think. Okay, so 4 points for large empires. We are going to get, unfortunately not that one anymore, but still, 1, 2, 3, 4. Also 4. Okay. And then feudums. We do have 1 feudum, so we get 3 points for the feudum. Whoops. 1, 2, 3. Do we have identical locations? Let's have a look. So we've got a town there. We can count... Oh, well, that town there anyway. So feudums are wild. You can count them as anything. So basically, if we had 1 less town, we could have counted this feudum as a town. So we do have 3 identical locations, so that gives us 3 points. 1, 2, 3. I hope the Queen does not. She has 1 farm, 2 farms, a town, an outpost, and that is it. So she does not rule 3 same locations. So fine. Shillings. We have 2 multiples of 3 shillings, so that's going to be 6. So 2 points for the 2 multiples of 3. Queen has again 2 points. Oh, this is not good. So the Queen has again 2 points. and no no writs with seals. So if we had gained a Royal Writ Charter at the end and we sealed it, we would have gained some points from that, but unfortunately not. And this is the kicker, because the Queen does get extra points. If we check the back of the rulebook, I believe it is multiples of 3, regardless of whatever else. So 1 point for each mandate. She does not have any writs, mandates or otherwise, so they don't count. And then 1 point for every combination of stuff in her area, basically. So she's going to get a point for those 3, a point for those 3 influence markers, a point for those shillings again, and those shillings, and then 2 landscapes, a rosary bead, and these 2 goods are superfluous. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ah dear, an extra 5 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that is the end of the game. So yes, I think possibly going into it we were going to be ahead, but after everything changed, we are not. And if I had been able to calculate on the fly, I may have extended it one more turn, one more round even, and tried to accumulate less dishonesty points by another Star of the People, and maybe some influence, other bits and pieces there. But the Queen may well have also carried on mucking us around with taking out this pawn and the Feudum and other bits and pieces. So yeah, anyway, that's how it goes. So if we look at the back, how did we do? So we were 5 points behind at the end of the game. Yep, that's 5. So we escaped with our life. Well, you can't really ask for more than that, to be honest. We at least didn't get beheaded, so there you go. So yeah, we escaped with our life. We live to fight another day. We shall definitely duel with the Queen at some other point in the future, I suspect. The behemoth lived, so that's a bonus, I think. Well, a moral victory anyway. And yeah, that's how the game plays. It's quite good. I think especially the 5 different decks of cards mean that you're not drawing from one deck, so things aren't going to necessarily chain together in unsatisfying ways. I think there's going to be a constant variation of cards coming through that are going to help things play out quite well. I think we did get extremely lucky this game in that the Queen did not run away with the guilds and locations. She seemed to be quite happy at basically just doing the southern area of the map, and that was about it. But she can spread out all over and plonk stuff all over the board and get into every guild and be guildmaster everywhere, if you do not keep on top of it. I believe the game does tend towards the military aspect a bit. If you are not doing feudums, at least one, we should have probably done more, to be honest, but if you're not doing feudums, then you're relying entirely on your pawns to get you into guild statuses, and that is not going to be enough. The Queen will out-pawn you, and she may very well out-feudum you as well, and jump all over the guilds as well. So it does, I believe, tend towards you need feudums, and therefore you need markers going into the disloyalty track to stop those points. Again, we should have probably been a bit more adept at getting markers in there, certainly necessarily in the early game, where it's not unheard of to knock out a few lone pawns and get those conkers going, and then do a feudum, and at least then you're set on the loyalty track, and you don't have to worry about it so much. But yeah, things worked out pretty well. I'm not unhappy with that. I think it went quite well. But yeah, that's how it goes. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see any of the Royal Writ cards, but they are basically either bonuses that help you with immediate stuff, so you can turn them in for points if you get the right resources, or they are sort of end of game bonuses for having various map locations and other bits and pieces. But yeah. So, still a game of Feudum. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a Merry Christmas if you're seeing this before Christmas. And I will see you next time.